All right, so that brings us to.
You gotta vote.
I guess we ought to do that.
I'm just very presumptuous.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Get the card out there before a horse. All right, so now we'll go down to number 5 on the agenda. This is the fiscal year 2024 budget adoption. And I'm going to let Mr. Ray and his staff lead this.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2024 budget to council. We'll start out going over the process by which we have made it to this point. In October of last year, the council held a vision retreat. At that time, council set the initiatives for the upcoming fiscal year. Then in November, we had a budget retreat where we talked about some of the items that we want to see in FY24. On April 4th, the staff proposed and published the budget draft that we had presented. We went through 4 council workshops. 3 of those were on standing meeting dates. The 4th was a special called meeting. Then on May 16th, we had a public hearing. We have not received any comments up until today's meeting. And then today is the June 6th, where we are asking council to consider adoption of the budget. As we've said before, the fiscal year is July 1, 2023 through June 30th of 2024. North Carolina law does require us to adopt it by June 30th. The budget as proposed has no change in the ad valorem tax rate. We do have an increase in our water and sewer rate as per our rate model. We have an increase of $4 for residential sanitation and some other increases to the sanitation schedule. And then we've included a 5% combined market and merit salary increase for city employees. As we'll note, the market increases will go in effect on the first pay period of July, and then the merit increases will go into effect in January of 24. You'll see here on the left-hand column, it'll show you the individual funds. The middle column will show you the current fiscal year as has been amended throughout the year. You'll see that total number represents $145 million plus or minus. What's being proposed to council for FY24 is on the far right-hand column. That's $121,940,238. You'll see that broken down by the multiple departments. In the center column, you're going to see what was recommended. That number is 121.5. What's being proposed to council after the workshops is 121.9. That change, you will note, is in the general fund. Those dollars, the only impact from the recommended to the proposed based on council direction occur within the general fund. Those 2 items are a contribution to one place. Council gave direction that we would contribute $1 million to one place to help with their construction of a new facility. That would go over 3 years. So that's $333,334 included in FY24. And then we increased a contribution to the Boys and Girls Club of $25,000. So the change from the recommended to the proposal is $358,333. That's what we did throughout our workshops and some of the changes. This slide here shows how we're breaking down the fund balance appropriations for each fund. The general fund, you'll see the original was $130,000, and then you'll see that increase of the $358,333. So that gives us that increase. The water and sewer fund, solid waste fund, and stormwater funds show no change from the recommended to the proposed. So the solid waste fund and the stormwater fund, as well as general fund, use fund balance appropriations. The water and sewer fund do not use an appropriation for FY24. The adopted budget breaks down into operations, capital, and transfers, so that adds up to your total budget of $121,940,238. And then we give you this slide so that you see out of that 121, roughly $59 million is salaries and benefits for our employees. So approximately 1/2 of our overall budget is based on salaries and benefits. A lot of that goes to the work that the council's done the last 3 years to make sure that we're moving the pay plan. And so we're very excited to show that to the council, as you can see the progress. And that's why we've been doing updates to council based on pay plan improvements. The 5% that we talk about for the merit and market increases, that's broken down. We are planning on applying 3% in July for all employees that are within our system. 1.5% of that will move the market. So we're going to take our full pay plan and move it 1.5%. The challenge there is to make sure that we maintain that pay plan for the duration of City of Jacksonville. And then within that pay plan, the 3% will move employees within their grade. That's the goal. So they'll go closer to the midpoint or to the high end of the pay plan. So that's our challenge, is to make sure that we're getting all of our employees to that point. One added point, you'll recall we're moving the police employees all into the pay plan. For this year, they were still, some of the entry patrol officers 1 and 2 were in the step plan. They've elected to move out of the step plan and into the pay plan, so they will be treated as everyone else. So all city employees, including part-time, are in the pay plan except for our telecommunicators. So everyone else, when we talk about pay plan and any type of market increase within that pay plan, includes all city employees except for telecommunicators. The telecommunicators will still be on their step plan. So if they're scheduled to have an increase year over year, then they'll have that increase. If not, then they will not receive when we talk about the 5% total.
Just out of curiosity, why would it be beneficial for them to stay on that when everybody else has come off of it?
Part of the challenge, Mayor, is the history of our city makes it so that some years we have improvements to pay, some years we may not have had increases to pay. So for individuals that choose to be on a step plan, they're guaranteed to receive those steps year after year. If you're in the pay plan, if the pay plan doesn't move or we do not implement a market increase, you're not guaranteed to get it. One of the things that Chief Yanero did this year, similar to how the fire department operated last year, he gave the individuals within those departments the opportunity to take a department-wide vote. And as we went through the education process, the police officers chose to go into the pay plan and the telecommunicators chose not to. Just for that, potentially, I would say the security of what the step plan provides. Albeit it may be a smaller step annually, but you're guaranteed that step. As I mentioned, Mayor, after the public hearing 2 weeks ago, we have not received any questions or comments on the budget from that time.
And we posted the budget where people could.
Yes, sir. So we posted at the library and at City Hall, and it's been online since the date it was published. That's all I have.
Questions? Anybody got any questions, concerns, remarks?
Just appreciate the process.
Yeah.
It's well executed, thank you.
You made it very simple to understand, and simple is good, right? Good. All right, so at this time, we need a motion to adopt the fiscal year budget.
Move adoption for the fiscal year 23-24 budgets
Second?
And capital improvement plan fee
and
schedule.
the capital improvement plan.
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Have a budget for this coming year. Next, we have bid award number 6 here for the wastewater Horse Main Segment 2 on Pony Farm Road to the LTS project. Wally, I assume you're going to.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. It feels like a long time coming getting to this point. This project's been on our radar since I think 2008 was the initial concept. So we're very happy to be here before you tonight to present. As we go through this, real quickly, what I'll do is kind of give you an overview of our current wastewater system. I know we've talked about this quite a few times over the years, and then we'll talk about how this project came to be, and then how we went through the bid process and what our recommendation is. So just a quick overview of our wastewater treatment system. We have a land application site that treats almost all of our wastewater. We have a small amount of wastewater collected in the Piney Green area that goes to Camp Lejeune. Other than that, the rest goes to the land application site, and it all flows through a collection system made up of gravity sewer, almost 300 miles of gravity sewer, and then 46 pump stations that move it to our main pump station, where it is sent almost 7 miles to the land application site through a 36-inch force main. So it looks like this. The blue is the city of Jacksonville. It all moves to the center area where you see those arrows right in front of Quartz Plus, and then almost 7 miles out to our land application site. And you can see that our land application site is 7,500 acres, which is roughly 12 square miles. The city is somewhere around 26 square miles, so just under half the city in land size. So how did we get to this point? Like I mentioned, we started this process back in 2008. We started planning for the future. We had just come out of a special order by consent where we were limited on the amount of wastewater capacity that we could give out. And planning for the future, we started doing some system modeling. We talked to developers, we looked at vacant land, and then we included all of our wastewater system into, a model that modeled the what we could expect for the future. And this just gives a snapshot, and I know it's small, but the important thing is all the red that you see on that slide means that wastewater is coming out of the ground in the future if we don't do something. So you can see there's a lot of red on that slide, primarily north of 17, which, as you're familiar, is where the city has the capacity to grow, all along Western Boulevard. Without this project, it would all come through the existing system. So everything that you see in yellow or red on that slide would have to be upgraded and improved. So we started looking at options, and one of the options was literally to upgrade everything along that system, including the main pump station, or to find a different route. So we came up with what we, if you'll remember, Greg called it kind of the bypass. So the thought was we could strategically locate another regional pump station that could intercept wastewater from our existing system, take some of the pressure off of our existing system, and then also build capacity for the future. So we sited that station. This is located kind of behind Williamsburg Plantation along a major gravity sewer line that currently serves a portion of Western Boulevard and the corridor along Gum Branch Road north of First Baptist Church. So just by intercepting that gravity sewer, it picks up all of that existing area, plus all of that future build out area. And then as part of the future, we have separate phases where we can extend a gravity sewer along Williamsburg Parkway out to Western Boulevard, and then we can redirect the Carolina Force pump station force main. So that would allow us to take everything along Western Boulevard all the way down past Carolina Force. And then there's actual future plans that we could go past that all the way to 17. So this station sets us up for the future. In addition to that, council also talked about the need for resiliency with our existing station. So as we talked about right now, all of the wastewater in the city goes to the main pump station, pumps 7 miles through one force main out to land application, with the exception of one area. The staff, when that was originally constructed in the late 90s, thought that it was important to run dual force mains under the new river because that was a possible area of failure that would be very difficult to address. So that said, we looked at the possibility of connecting this regional pump station with the main pump station via force main and valving that could be controlled so that wastewater could be directed through that force main in either direction. So that's actually the third phase long-term of this project, and that is included in your long-term CIP, in your 10-year CIP. So with that, what we're talking about tonight is really the first 3 pieces of this project, which is contracts 1, 2, and 3, as we have called them. And it's segment 2 of the force main that you see is in orange, which is going to be the piece that we talk about this evening. And then the red segment that you see in the pump station. And then there's some minor upgrades at Headworks that need to be done to accept an additional force main, but that would be part of the pump station project because those are similar type of work. So we're really talking about 3 contracts. Here's the proposed schedule. This is a pretty aggressive schedule. You can see we kind of tentatively threw in an August 23 start date. That might be a little bit early because we would have to get contract awarded, the pipe ordered and in place, all of the submittals made. But theoretically, if we could start somewhere around the August timeframe, you can see for contracts 1, 2, and 3, which is the 2 force mains and the pump station, we would be looking at completion somewhere around, end of summer of 2025. That's important. Again, aggressive, but important. So the current CIP, the current capital improvement plan, has funding for these 3 projects totaling about $43.5 million. Of that, we have state ARP funding that came to us, American Rescue Plan, I think is the term there, from Senator Lazaro. In addition, we were notified that we would get an additional $3 million. What I can tell you is that is not on this slide because we did not have final approval. We actually received that yesterday. So this slide could be updated to show $23 million of ARP funding from Senator Lazaro. We also have federal funding that the city received directly that council has had multiple discussions about and decided to apply toward this project to help offset some of the costs, and totaling about $9 million. So the important part of the schedule is that this money has to be spent by December 31st of 2026. Whatever is not spent has to be given back. So the importance of the aggressive schedule is not only to make sure that we get the money spent, but to make sure that we have plenty of time to get the money spent. And while it doesn't require things to be in operation, we would like to see everything in operation before that date. So that said, there is a delta remaining in your CIP. Your rate model that we talk about every year with budget has the rest of that funding slated to be revenue bonds. So that's how we would fund the first 3 contracts of this project. So contract 1, the first segment of that force main that I talked about, actually goes from Pony Farm Road to the land application site. So the plan is to get that project under construction or started and be right behind it with the second contract that would bring the force main from the station, the new station location, to this project. The important pieces or components of this project is the bore under 258, which will be well-planned and executed construction. And then we will be working at the land application site, and there will be some shoring required because we will be in the bank of the berm for our east lagoon. So those are the critical components of this contract. And you can see that the engineer's estimate for this portion of the contract was about $13 million, $12,990,000. That did include alternate 2, which is conduit for fiber. The other alternate was a selective alternate that we put in, and that was at the recommendation of the engineer after talking to multiple material suppliers. The reason we included the use of HDPE instead of PVC in select areas was because HDPE was much cheaper material-wise. So we expected bids to come back with a credit. What we did not expect is that most of the bidders that bid this project were not used to working with that large of HDPE, which requires the material to be fused together. And what they did not like and did not want to plan for is that creates challenges when you're working in developed areas. The idea behind HDPE is that you could dig a lot longer trench, fuse it together, and pull the pipe in, and then backfill. That creates challenges in some of the areas that we're working. So we did have one bidder that bid it as a credit, one bidder did not bid it, and then two were increases because they were not comfortable working with HDPE in this area. But it did create options for us to consider. So we opened public bids on May 10th. We received 4 bids. They were read aloud in accordance with general statute, and all of the bidders met all of the statutory requirements. So we did have valid bids. This is what the base bids look like. You can see they range from roughly $14 million to over $18 million. The lowest bid was provided by Carolina Utilities Company. Their base bid was $4,035,000. They did not bid alternate 1. What our bid document stated was that you had to provide a response to the alternate, and in the directions to the bidders, it said if you do not wish to bid, then you could write in no bid, which is what this contractor did. And then alternate 2, which is the conduit for fiber, they bid $273,000. In your packet that went out, we did a detailed review of the bid, the bidder, the qualifications. We provided a pretty extensive write-up, and we did find, along with the engineer, that this bidder was the lowest responsible bidder. So options for you tonight. You have 3 options. The first is to tentatively award this bid to Carolina Utilities Company. The reason the word is tentatively is with the funding from the state, you award it, but it's not final until they approve it. So they will do a review of the bid award that we send to them. And there's actually a resolution that you would adopt tonight if you choose to move forward with option 1, in which this resolution would allow them to award the bid. The second is to reject the lowest bid and direct staff to evaluate the second bidder. To do this, you would have to determine a reason for rejecting the lowest bidder, but that is always an option. And the reason I say you would direct staff to evaluate the second bidder is we have done a preliminary evaluation. We've determined that it was responsive, but we don't call the references to every single bidder. We don't put engineering companies and owners of other projects through the extensive review that we do for the lowest bidder. And then the third option is to reject all bids and rebid the project. The reason you have this option is because technically all of the bids received were over the $12,990,000 engineer estimate. However, we would remind you that that estimate was almost 18 months old at this point, and it was based off of market conditions from a detailed estimate that had been provided earlier. And the reason is because of the current market. We actually didn't know what the project would come in at until we bid it out. As can be seen with other projects that have been recently bid, we've seen prices come in, thank goodness not for us, but more than 20 and 30% above the engineer's estimates. So those are your three options. Based on all of the information, the detailed review that staff did, the engineer's recommendation for the project, staff would recommend that you move forward with this project because we do have a deadline that we have to meet to keep the funding. What I will say is the bid came in very close to where I thought it would be. And I was happy that it wasn't higher. So I think if we did rebid this project, I think the bid would come in higher. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Council, any questions?
Alternate one, what's the difference in terms of HDP and PVC in terms of life, construction methods or whatever?
HDPE, so in this area, so the PVC is C900, which is high pressure pipe. It's a very good pipe, and I would say is, a good alternative to HDPE. In higher, for example, in Alaska and other areas that have, extreme conditions, seismic conditions, you see a lot of HDPE because it's fused. There's not a lot of fittings, and it's pretty resilient. But around here, we really use a lot of PVC, and we have C900 PVC that is deep installed with gravity. At one point, we did look at ductile iron for this force main, which the existing 36-inch force main from the main pump station is ductile iron, but the cost was, at the time the estimate was done, the cost was almost $5 million more, or $4 million more. It was pretty excessive. So we did, we think PVC is probably the best material for this. Although I say that, and in hopefully in a couple of months, I'm back in front of you asking for the award of contract 2. And that contract will have some HDPE in it because we would use HDPE for the bore underneath the river so that we don't have any joints or anything under the river.
Is it a metal composite or what?
No, both are plastic pipe.
Plastic, okay.
Yes, sir.
The gas company puts in HDPE, so all that yellow pipe that you see is along the road, that's HDPE.
It's flexible pipe.
It is.
The C900 is a rigid pipe.
Okay,
Any other questions of Mr. Hanson?
I think he did an excellent job in making the presentation, and I note without reference to notes. Exactly. You provide us confidence in your ability to analyze these bids. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mayor, remember, he's been working on it for 15 years, so I think it's the only thing he's done since he's been with the city. He hasn't worked on any other
You
project.
saying he's a slow learner or what?
Mr. Bittner, I'm just saying, he's been on it for a while.
Sadly, there's only 2 people still involved with this project that were here when it was originally conceived. Myself and the engineer for the company. the engineer for Kinley-Horn. Well, and Mr. Cartwright, yes. So, direct involvement. Well done.
Any other questions, sir, from the council? All right, you're being asked to approve this bid and bid alternate 2.
Bid alternate option 1.
Option 1, we'll go with option 1, it's basically the same thing as bid.
Okay.
It's the base bid and alternate 2 to Carolina Utilities Company in the amount of $14,380,000, is that right?
14,035.
14,385, okay.
No, 35.
Okay.
$14,308,622.50,
To include bid option
52
2.
cents.
which includes
Bid-
alternate
bid
2.
alternate 2.
Yes, sir.
Did you make the motion, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from council? With that said, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And again, time is of essence on that, like you say, because money gets called back after the end of 2026. Item number 7, and this is a UDO text amendment to Article 5, the development standards of the theme buildings. And Brian King will be presenting this. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just threw this together last week, so just go easy on me. You have 15
You
years.
don't have it
on
memorized yet?
I may, I don't know, let's see how it works out. So, we've recently been approached by a business owner about the ability to create a themed building. As the mayor and council may remember, I would argue that the ARC building before it was demolished was kind of a themed building. It looked like a boat. Based on the adoption of Unified Development Ordinance in 2014, Articles 5.8 and 5.9, which are design criteria that I've kind of got on the screen in front of you, along with the sign regulations, would prohibit something like that from happening as the ordinance is currently written. And before the applicant decided to make an application, pay a fee to go through the process, we kind of wanted to kind of have a little dialogue with council to kind of get a feel for the potential changes that this would create as it relates to what we've been doing with new construction since 2014 as it relates to design standards and also the signage standards. So it's a mixture of both items, the sign component, the way that we have signage defined, which was a result of a Board of Adjustment case that happened in the early 2000s, 2001-2 timeframe with the Sleeping Dragon, and then, like I said, with the UDO, with the design criteria. A definition of sign, pretty much anything could be utilized as a sign. So it's a pretty robust definition that we created because of that case. At that time, there was a painted on sign that was not lawful and it was too large compared to what they were allowed to have. And the applicant argued that the dragon wasn't sleeping because his eye was cracked slightly. And the Board of Adjustment actually upheld that and said, okay, well, that's not a sign because it's not a sleeping dragon. And that's what resulted in staff really diving into definitions as it relates to signage across the country to make sure that we didn't have kind of a loophole where the dragon was not quite sleeping, but yet there was a dragon across the entire building there on Marine Boulevard. So what we thought we would do is show some examples of the buildings that we've seen since the UDO adoption. And with the design criteria, we have standards that relates to materials, a glazing requirement of between 12 and 15%, depending on if it's a large building or small building. They have to choose 3 features as relates to the facades that face the street. And you kind of get a building that looks a certain way. So an example, Panera Bread, the building in the same area where you have the US Cellular and the 510, I believe is the name of the business now. It used to be the USAA, I believe. You know, you've got some columns, you've got entry features, you've got variations in the roof lines. Lowe's Foods, you got a lot of glass here. They exceed the 15% requirement, the 12% requirement, depending on which one that was. It's probably the 12% requirement. And Academy, another example, they have glazing, you know, an entry feature, and they meet those design criteria as the Unified Development Ordinance. So when you get into some examples of themed buildings, they don't quite look the same. It's to draw attention to the business. And this is an example of a pirate ship building in Watkins Glen, New York. You have some examples in Myrtle Beach. If you look at what's on the roof here, you know, we don't allow above roof signs in Jacksonville for one, but number 2, I mean, that's a rather large sign if you were to add the square footage of the feature on the roof. Yeah, this whole building pretty much is a sign. So, and we limit the amount of signage that can be on a building. So that's the signage component that also has to be dealt with. Here's an old train caboose. This is fairly famous. I didn't know about it till we were doing this research, but apparently this is a fairly famous diner somewhere. And you know, it's a train car, and one could argue, well, that's a themed building. It's a train. And then everybody probably knows this one from Myrtle Beach, the Wonderworks. Whole building does its job. It gets your attention. And I even threw one from the art building, just for old time's sake. I missed the hush puppies.
Oh, yeah.
But because the way the UDO is written today, they would have a difficult time meeting the standards of the Unified Development Ordinance. So being that where we've been the last 9 years, we've seen a lot of, I think, decent, the shark attack, the alligators, I mean, this is a huge sign in front of the building, and it just wouldn't meet the criteria. That while the building may meet our glazing and our design, that in front of the building would not work in Jacksonville just because of the pure size. We allow 2 square feet for every linear foot of building frontage. So just wanted to kind of get a feel for, is this something where, you know, council would like to see, you know, staff kind of try to find some ways that would allow something like that, or is that not necessarily a path we want to go down? And really the main concern here is before somebody applies and spends an application fee, we just kind of wanted to get some feel from council, because from a staff standpoint, there's certainly concerns, because this is really, I think, undoing what we've been doing since the UDO was adopted, and where does it end? So.
Mayor, when the business owner came in, this business owner was taking an existing building and renovating it to start a new business in an existing facility. So when the business owner came in, they met with Mr. King and his team, and they asked the question of, can we do these things? And Mr. King relayed back to him and said, you can't do that within the existing Unified Development Ordinance, but you can get open. And that was a great thing for us, was to be able to explain to the business owner who's doing business in other places that there's an avenue for you to open up a business. That business has been open now for maybe a month or so, and I think the business is going well. But in part of this dialogue, when he followed back up with Mr. King and his team, the question was, even though he understood, is there a process by which they could ask somebody about, is there a change? So we were very thorough in explaining to them the process, explaining to them what the positive and the negatives to this change in our ordinance would look like, and then to tell them the best thing for us to tell the business was get open, so that that's not something you're waiting on, and then let us go through this process and get direction from council. Because if not, it would have delayed their opening for quite some time. And they had other things that they were doing in the process. So the great part of the story is we didn't delay them. They've been open. But now his question is, could we do something that you see in other areas and get that direction from council?
Some of that stuff looks pretty good, but once you open the door, you can't control content. Is that right?
Mr. Carter?
Yes, sir, I mean, you're right.
Yeah,
Once
pick
you're-
and choose.
That's exactly right.
If we could add King Kong, Mayor, and just King Kong,
I think that would be an attractive addition.
That would be good.
Yeah. Well, I think it works in like touristy areas like Myrtle Beach and at the beach with the shark. And I think, but here, the way we're going now, I think it's just a step backwards is the way I look at it, so.
What do you mean you can't control content?
Well, once you open the door for the ship, the pirate ship, then others will come with their facades, and it may not be a pirate ship, it might be a big King Kong or whatever, but you have to be consistently applied. The ordinance would have to be written in such a way that I would be entitled to have my King Kong on my building, just like he's got his pirate ship on his building. You've got to write the ordinance in such a way that everyone is fed out of the same spoon, is treated the same. Consistency, again, it would have to apply. Does that help, Mr. Bender? Maybe that's not where you want to go.
No, not really.
Then not everybody will play nice. And
that's-
you may have some things that you don't want to be.
Well, and the other thing I look at is like, say this place goes in there to do well for say 10 years, they decide to move out and then they have a big pirate ship that's sitting there vacant and is, falling apart and then no one else wants pirate ship there. So, I think that becomes a liability down the road.
Painting murals on walls.
Yeah.
Same problem.
Yes and no.
No, that's a little bit
That's
different.
different.
Yeah. But if you have a full structure of a boat or a gorilla or whatever, that's a lot harder to cover up and, or tear down or just let it sit there and, rot, so.
Let me ask you a question. What if we decided to do a water park in Jacksonville? Because that's kind of assigned into itself. Would we have to change the ordinance to do that?
That's a great question. I would argue that like water park slides are structures. I don't know that they would have to meet the design criteria, but that's something we certainly would have to look at. That's actually a very great question.
Well, those are things you use, you're not gonna sail on that pirate.
Well, and Mayor, think about too, when Mr. King presented a couple meetings ago, he mentioned that for our 400 acres, when we're developing that, more than likely, that's gonna come and be a planned unit development. And that's gonna be something that, because potentially it has a lot of different uses inside of one area, then that PUD would be something that you apply different aspects of our development ordinance in different areas. So there's gonna have to be a give and a take that will have to come back to council. Now, if it's a standardized development, then you would have to you'd have to go through the ordinance the way it is. But if it's a planned unit development, then it gives us some flexibility to present back, and potentially that's where we're gonna be when we come back to council on that development.
Holding the line makes things easier, for sure, and opening the door does kind of open the floodgates. The only sad part of holding the line is that entertainment is one of the things we're sorely lacking.
That's right.
And our community needs entertainment options. And many times entertainment businesses don't fit in just a square box with square windows. So having no option is difficult, just like having the barn doors open, the horse is already out of the barn kind of problem. So you don't want either. It's just kind of sad that we can't have some sort of fun and creative thing especially for entertainment venues.
Mayor, part of our discussion when we're talking about downtown revitalization, we talk about some of that uniqueness to occur within the architecture. So the architecture still gives us some of that freedom to build unique buildings. It's not going to give us the freedom to put Wonderworks in the center of downtown where, let's say, hypothetically, a courthouse or a jail's at. But it would give us the ability to build something unique that could, and so we agree, we've had this discussion now for at least 2 months. Mr. King and I both have went over and over on this. And there's some flexibility that has been afforded to the one business we're talking about that works within the ordinance that the council's already approved. And that's been some good addition for both, for Ryan and Jeremy working through that process. And that's a value add. And for the building owner, he's responded with, that helps, right? Those are good value adds for the business. But conceptually, if you want to do something that really gets someone's attention, our concern is the concept that Mr. Carter points out, that you can't control content. It's more than just King Kong. There are a lot of things that we could start seeing on glass walls and on sides of buildings that some people may find offensive. Flags that you hang in your front yard, you don't control content on those as well, and a lot of those are offensive to people. So it creates challenges, especially on a large item like this. But I like the pirate ship concept, but I don't like it within the UDO and the way that we label the system.
Main corridors are different too. You know, commercial corridors would be different than somewhere perhaps on the 400 acres or downtown where you are facilitating a certain kind of development, and then you can perhaps have slightly different parameters for food.
And we are kind of a tourist area as well. We are, especially with the people coming in and the possibility of some of these, you know, the reunions that we're gonna bring in. It's gonna be considered. I mean, Campbell's takes away our coastline, but you can go around that area. So, but we are tourists, so we gotta think
We have
different.
tourism.
Yeah, we do.
We don't have cultural tourism.
We don't.
We have sports
We have to think about
and
that.
military, not cultural.
Yeah, that's the artist talking to me
Yep.
right now.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, right. By the way.
Well, we do have some culture, we have agriculture.
And to be fair, not to ignore the things that do exist here, we do have a couple of small theaters that are doing really great productions. So there are people making an effort. There is a community here that's trying.
There is talent here.
There's talent in town.
Right.
There's just
We have to nurture the
a lot of,
facilities so we can have more culture.
You
We'll continue this
have to
conversation.
balance, everything has to be balanced. You know, and again, like I was talking about with content, you can't regulate content. Once you open a door for something, it's just, look, we've had things in this community before where it took a long time to get rid of that were probably distasteful to a lot of people. So, I mean, you gotta think about that, you know, it's.
Mayor, marquee signs are something historically in the country that have been a challenge. When a marquee sign becomes a problem, and when you can't, you know, the old signs were all neon lighting, and you can't replace neon lighting the way that they used to build them. You have to replace them with updated technology. Those signs can be a challenge too, based on the size of the building. Historically, marquee signs could be bigger than the building in terms of signage. And so now when a new owner comes in and creates that challenge, you have to consider that within its place and the value to the culture of the community. So that's part of this challenge. I would argue the pirate ship may not be part of that culture of the community concept, but as we continue to grow and we see more of a demand, we have the ability to bring back the request to council for continued direction as we review it. And I think that's what we need to do if we were to have 3, 4, and 5 requests come in. As a staff, our responsibility is to bring that back to council consistently.
What if somebody came in with a military-themed building?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd say it's the same concept. It doesn't exist within the UDO as it's written now. We would still have to have a redirection and some concepts by council to allow similar.
Why don't you reach out to some other communities and get some idea of how they go about regulating instead of trying to reinvent the wheel on this thing?
Certainly do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, we'll bring it back to you, Mayor. What you'll see from a lot of the research that we've already looked at, what you're gonna see is our UDO is the standard model, whether it's 2014 or how we've updated it over the last 7, 8, 9 years. Our model is gonna be the standard, except in tourism development. These pictures that Mr. King's showing you, they're gonna be all along the coastline on the east and the west. They're gonna be in Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. There's a couple at Niagara Falls, all of those hubs for tourism-related industries. But in every part of the country, you'll see it. But we can bring that information back to you so you can see similar.
Is that the guidance you're looking for?
I think that we were able to tell the applicant that we're not ready. Certainly, he can apply and go through the process. I just don't know that he would gain a staff-supported recommendation but at the same time, we're not gonna just basically close the door on it. We're gonna take some time to see if we can find something that may work and work with him. He's been great to work with so far, so.
I think that was the wise thing to do, is to go ahead and approve the business first and then
Let them get
work
open.
through everything else.
What we don't want to do, Mayor, is we don't want to encourage applicants just to put in an application and pay for a process if we know that they don't fit into the UDO. And this is where the applicant was. He says, well, what do I need to do to apply? Well, fortunately, when he asked that question, Mr. King followed up with him, talked through him through the process and said, you could apply whatever that permit would be. Let's say it's $500. That's still $500 that if it's not gonna get a favorable and it can't make it through planning and zoning, we wouldn't want them to waste those dollars, because then there's no refund at the end when you put the staff time in.
It's not fair.
Yeah, and so we were very clear with him so that he understood and his team understood that's the challenge. Why make them waste money just to go through a process?
Right.
Does other restaurants that like chips?
No, that's just,
Is it an idea for here, I guess?
just the one. He had a concept in another place that had a theme, but part of the outside had part of a ship. And so, but again, it was in a different community that could see the water, right? That's kind of that concept.
Well, we want to promote, all forms of tourism, including cultural tourism, which would be, the murals and some things like that. There's a lot of ways to do that, and we're not trying to become Myrtle Beach. So, I think you're on the right track. We want to slam the door, but it's not likely at this time.
All right.
That's good.
Thank you.
I got a question, right? Like with the vape shops, they're in among other businesses, and it's like, they fit inside the UDO, evidently, I would think. But it's like the lighting, it's like it pulls you in there, it gets your attention anyway, I say.
So one of the
Beyond
things that I would mention, and staff's tried to balance small businesses, startup businesses with those that have been around for a long time. We could certainly propose a sign regulation that would require channel letters. That's where every time a new business goes in there, it's a custom sign. But you could imagine that the cost there is going to go up. The other component is, if you're allowed 100 square feet, it comes back to kind of like what Mr. Carter was talking about. You get 100 square feet. If you want to use LED lights to do that, right now the current ordinance allows that. And you're limited on the amount that you can have. But if you've got that box and you've got it with LED lights, we don't prohibit LED lights for making a sign. We don't prohibit neon. Like Mr. Ray said, neon's really not the thing today. They've gone to LED. They're just more efficient, newer technology, whatever it may be, more so than with neon. I don't know that there's a whole lot of companies that still work with neon, but so if you're allowed 100 square feet, you may have a sign that's tastefully done, but I may not. But I still get 100 square feet just like you get 100 square feet. And to kind of start dealing with that situation, you may create other problems. But that's certainly, if council has concerns with illumination and signage, that's something we certainly could look at. But right now, if you get 100 square feet and you want to use LED lights to make up that sign, then you're able to do that. Now, whether they're exceeding the allotment, that's a different discussion.
And then policing that too.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's talk baseball.
Thank you, Mayor. This item we presented back to council at our last council meeting. We presented some concepts to council about bringing baseball to Jacksonville in the summer of 2024 to be a member of the Old North State Baseball League. When we presented to council, we mentioned these facts that we have local entrepreneurs, the Patinos, who are here this evening, sitting to the mayor's left and behind Dr. Washington. They approached the city with the opportunity to bring a team to Jacksonville, not coming from somewhere else, but to purchase a team from the Old North State League and to make that our local baseball team. We worked in partnership with the Patinos to put together a lease agreement for them to lease the ball field at Jack Emiette and for us to work with them to create an atmosphere that would give a quality baseball experience here in the community. The agreement that we presented and we're asking council to consider is a 3-year agreement. The first part of the agreement is from June 1st to July 31st. And then the subsequent agreements are for 60 days for the next 2 years. So we renew that annually. We presented no charge for the 2024 season for the Patinos with this agreement, and then we said that we would review the annual rent and the negotiation terms next year when it's time for renewal, so that we allow them the opportunity to establish a presence here in Jacksonville. At that meeting, council asked us to follow up with other interested parties. We have spoken to another league that had interest in the region, that has 14 teams within the region, down from Georgia all the way up to Virginia. Had some very fantastic discussions with them, and they informed us that they have certain requirements for their stadiums. They also informed us that they do love the market, they love the region, they want to be a partner in Jacksonville, but that if we're looking at doing baseball at Jack Amyette without some significant improvements would not qualify for their standards to bring a team to here. So in that conversation, I mentioned to the other league that we would like to bring this back to council and to consider this, and they supported that concept that we bring it back, and said that we want to be a partner moving forward, and hope that as they develop additional teams, I believe I stated that they have 14 teams in their league, and there's 15 in the Old North State League at this time. So I think we're developing good partnerships for the region to make this region a stronger baseball advocate, as I would say. Kinston has their team, Morehead City, Wilmington, Goldsboro, Greenville, multiple communities here have opportunities for baseball. For ours, this opportunity is just for summer college level baseball, wood bat league per se. And for the Patinos, it could offer the opportunity to create entertainment options at the ballpark, which is what we think is the major benefit. Not only are we talking about 28 to 30 games at Jack Amyette, but we're talking about additional activity that could happen in a field that is of excellent quality. I mentioned to Mr. Warden, I was at Kinston this weekend watching a game, and you look at the quality of the grass on the field at a minor league Class A in Kinston compared to what we have at Jack Amyette, and our field is phenomenal. I would say potentially it's of higher quality. We don't have as much traffic on it, but our field maintenance is incredible. And I think that's one of the things for the Patinos, when they saw the field, it creates that opportunity. So based on those discussions and the information that council asked us to bring back, we presented this information back to the mayor, asked the mayor if we could bring it back at this meeting instead of the 20th. He said that we could put it on the agenda per the discussion. And so we wanted to present this back to you based on our discussions with the other league and their vote of confidence in baseball in Jacksonville.
Any questions? Entertain a motion to approve the.
Mr. Bennett.
Question.
I'm sorry.
How many games will they be playing?
So their season is plus or minus 60 games. But
What are we giving up in terms of other uses of Jack Amyette Field?
so part of our process in the scheduling, so they have games on different nights of the week. And so part of our season, we have already planned to relocate some of our games. We'll still be able to have some games at Jack Amyette, but our goal would be to relocate Jack Amyette games to other fields. We've had a reduced play-in schedule at Jack Amyette in the last 2 years, and especially while we've been working on the facility. So as we acclimate back into that field, again, being an amazing field, we would just need to go ahead and make that schedule now. That's part of the reason, Mr. Bittner, why the value of bringing this concept to the council and to the city now. For one, so that the Patinos can get through their process and start with their work. Two, for us to be able to schedule for next year. So I think there's a lot of value with the opportunity now.
And it brings some different entertainment to the area too, so it's nice.
It is very exciting to think about adding this entertainment option for the community.
Other questions, comments? All right, so I need a motion now to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement with the Jacksonville Baseball LLC.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Looking forward to it. get there though.
I don't think they won't be doing that.
Not with that shoulder.
Not on my shoulder like this.
Maybe put it, right?
Yeah, maybe put it. Okay, all right, so that's everything except for the, one city moment.
Thanks, Mayor. We do have, I want to bring this to you. This past weekend was Memorial Day weekend, and in our community, this is one of those times of year that we can appreciate those that have given an ultimate sacrifice to defend our country, and I think that's amazing for us, not only as a country, but especially, as I said, for our community. So for Memorial Day weekend, we had a lot of activities in and around the city. We had the flag placement at the Veterans Cemetery. Again, this is something that our country does in recognizing our men and women that have served the country. And you see, to be out and about in the community is truly a one city activity. It's multiple people appreciating those that have served. You see our fire personnel, our community members, our service men and women out and about. We also had the 2nd Marine Division Band concert. So with them performing inside the community is another opportunity for us to appreciate those men and women that have served here in and around the world. Next thing up, we had the candlelight vigil that a lot of people attended. This is at the Vietnam Memorial, and so the value there, this is not as much a weekend of a celebration weekend, but it's an appreciation weekend, and that's something that you constantly want to remind people is
Remembrance.
it is, and that's the value around our country, and so you saw that throughout the weekend. Rolling Thunder, they had their Freedom Ride where they came through the community. Unlike tonight, they had amazing weather, and you can see, I think this arm is probably from Chief Tomlin's, one of his trucks, putting out the flag over top of the road. So we appreciate having the opportunity to have them come through the community and to be a partner for our recognition and our remembrance events. This is something that happens annually, and it gives our citizens the opportunity to be out and to appreciate what we're doing. This was actually on Memorial Day, and this is the observance. You can see General Stewart here, active for the ceremony, and collectively, members of our council were present, and a lot of community members too.
Wow.
There's that. Right. Best picture I've ever seen of him. We're going to keep putting this picture up week after week because it's such a good picture. But we were excited, and we're appreciative of our council being able to show up for our events and for our team to be out in the community. That's our one city for this time, Mayor.
So we need a motion here to go into closed session.
Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Okay, this is to discuss some property acquisition. Right.
We
Take a breather.